So I once again find myself standing on the fault line between the left and right-leaning groups who came together over our common disagreement with this social justice horseshit. And thereupon, I find myself once again having to address a topic that is sure to stir the hornet's nest and provoke more infighting, which can only serve to hurt our common cause. But this is an article I promised to look into for a very good friend of mine, and I can definitely understand his outrage. I think this is a lesson that should have been learned long ago, but apparently it continues to fall on many deaf ears. The absolute worst thing you could do in attempting to fight this social justice crap, or any contentious topic really, is to give your opposition reason to generalize everyone on our side of the fence as the reactionary, intolerant assholes they think we are. It is the worst thing you can do to put forth an irrational argument that colors everyone to the right of the regressive left as moral authoritarians and monsters of SJW caliber or worse. And to that end, sometimes it's necessary to decry those who agree with you, but for the wrong reasons. Just as I would have never suspected that I'd find myself defending anything coming from Fox News 3 years ago, I also would have never thought I'd find myself defending anything coming from Salon.com even 6 months ago. But apparently that day too has arrived, because as of June 7th, Andrew Bizad of Shubat.com personifies the very worst of right-wing extremism and the precise reason why these SJW ass clowns are wont to demonize any straight, white, Christian male and hold them all equally accountable for their supposed oppression. His is the Pat Robertson brand of Christianity, wherein every tragedy on earth is literally the wrath of God for not adhering to his highly subjective, decidedly warped interpretation of Scripture. As I have said many times before, I am an atheist. I place no value in the supposed authority of the church or their holy book, and as such, any Christians among my audience, depending on how literally you take the word of the Bible, may not be inclined to listen to me. You might even decide to unsubscribe, and if that's the case, I'm sorry you feel that way. But if we're going to continue making progress in this fight, you need to understand the way you sound to people who don't believe as you believe. Especially in the case of people like this, whose belief makes him completely deaf to reason and completely blind to efforts for the sake of peaceful compromise. Andrew quotes Todd Nickerson of Salon.com. Those individuals who have the courage to come forward and lay claim to this affliction with the understanding that they only want to use their pedo powers for good should be commended, not hated and feared. You can't imagine how difficult it is to tell people you're a pedophile, even a non-offending one, and even if those people are other pedos. Truly, the very concept of a pedophile who neither molests nor wants to molest children is often anathema to people's way of thinking. The long-held belief that pedophiles are destined to abuse kids is a tough one to overcome. Yet many of us get just as upset as, if not more upset than, non-pedophiles when we read accounts of sexual abuse, not only because we hate when one of the little people we love most suffers, but also because whenever yet another pedophile is arrested, it reinforces the reigning paradigm of the pedo as a ticking time bomb. For better or worse, mostly worse, we have this sexuality, and unlike with most sexualities, there is no ethical way we can fully actualize our sexual longings. Our desires and feelings, if we are to remain upright, are doomed from the onset. Indeed, whereas the majority of crimes can be bounced back from, society doesn't extend a mulligan to molesters. I understand why, but that doesn't make the burden any lighter to bear, particularly for those of us who have minimal or no attraction to adults. And for the pedos who are lucky enough to be able to form working relationships with adults, there are a new set of concerns. What if we have children? Will I be a threat to them? Can I ever share this fact with my spouse? Can I ever love and want her as much as I do a child? So please, be understanding and supportive. It's really all we ask of you. Treat us like people with a massive handicap we must overcome, not as a monster. If we are going to make it in the world without offending, we need your help. Listening to me was a start. Now, while I find a few sentences in that piece facetious at best, and certainly a worrying indicator of just how seriously he might take this topic moving forward, I do agree with his message at face value. And that was the misunderstanding that the objectors to the Hearts Progress collaboration seem to have in common. The belief that we all see pedophiles as monsters and seek to condemn them even before their offense. Well, I can only speak for myself, and from my perspective, to seek help with this type of psychological affliction in a political environment so hostile toward it, especially knowing exactly what agony awaits them in their treatment, is a brave and humanitarian act. And so long as they acknowledge the harm of acting on their desires, so long as they truly wish to be treated, I support them. Andrew, on the other hand, could not have been quicker to completely disregard the central message of this article. Salon deleted the article from its website after significant public outcry. While on one hand this can be good and understandable, it is also unfortunate because the article is a public reminder and historical marker for our times of the darker side of the LGBT's agenda that is selectively discussed. Among many goals which the LGBT movement is being used for, which include but are not limited to the abolition of the family, the ushering in of a new totalitarianism in the form of National Socialism, and the public removal of any ideas of Christianity or even God and replacing them with men of power, the LGBT is also being used to push for eugenics in the form of destroying the ability of children to become functioning adults at their early stages by normalizing child rape. Hearts Progress and this Todd Nickerson of Salon.com could not be more opposed in their goals. Hearts Progress really does seek to normalize child rape, but Todd Nickerson and those like him actually seem to understand what harm this does and ultimately seek to remove themselves as a threat by seeking treatment. Yet within the first paragraph of his response, Andrew Bizod demonstrates not only that Nickerson's plea for compassion and understanding went completely unheeded, but that he and his ilk at Shoebat.com conflate the LGBT rights movement with LGBT people as a whole, and conflate both with anything and everything with which they disagree on the grounds of its standing in Scripture. Honestly, this takes me back to the glory days of Thunderfoot's Why Do People Laugh at Creationists series, wherein creationists of all stripes constantly lumped everything from abiogenesis to Big Bang Theory together under the nonsensical monikers evolutionism and Darwinism, labels which really only referred to anything that does not agree with a literal interpretation of their respective holy texts, regardless of what little it had to do with Charles Darwin or evolutionary theory. It is true that certain proponents of the modern LGBT rights movement have joined in arms with this social justice insanity we've been seeing, as indicated with the recent addition of black and brown stripes to their iconic rainbow flag. But neither this iteration of the LGBT rights movement nor any other have ever spoken for all LGBT people, just the same as no wave of feminism has ever spoken for all women. And regardless of how much it may offend your religious sensibilities, there is no relation between what two consenting adults do in the privacy of the bedroom and the molesting of children. Were it not for the fact that he is barking up the wrong tree, Andrew's objection to pedophilia at first runs parallel to the objections we conveyed against Hearts Progress. He acknowledges the tendency for such trauma to warp a child's cognitive development and perpetuate this cycle of abuse in their pending adulthood. And then he said this, effectively flushing any semblance of rationality down the toilet. It should also not be a surprise that homosexuals would be involved in committing such crimes. As we have repeatedly discussed, homosexuality is condemned by both the Old and New Testament as a sin that is worthy of death because it is an advanced sign of a debased mind and disorder of the soul. It is why throughout much of Christian history, those who have been caught engaging in homosexual acts or behaviors have been severely punished up to and including death. Homosexuality can be looked at as a kind of advanced spiritual rot, therefore, in whatever society or people it enters into. As the rot is removed by coming closer to Christ, homosexuality will both disappear and a natural aversion to and hatred of homosexuality will naturally form. Conversely, the more society removes itself from the church and eventually God, the more homosexuality will appear as it is a perversion of that which is from God. It's this kind of slippery slope bullshit that allows the regressive left to cling to their delusions of justice and compassion. It's this very kind of xenophobic nonsense that allows them to dehumanize straight, white males and to believe that everyone to the right of their ideology is a tyrannical fascist who needs to be destroyed by any means necessary. This is what they see when they look at us. This is how they believe we all think, and this is how they convince themselves that people standing outside of their ideological bubble seek to treat them as second-class citizens. Because that is exactly what assholes like Andrew Bizod actually want. First of all, Andrew, we observe separation of church and state for a reason, and that reason is made plain in your every word. Just because Christianity is the most popular religion in this country does not mean that you have the right to inject your religious sensibilities into our government. Not everyone in this country shares your beliefs, and you do not have the right to dictate their lives based on what you perceive to be a sin. It is because of people like you that we are barred from putting forth every effort into objectively understanding homosexuality, because its presence in the DSM was assumed tantamount to the sanctimonious bullshit you're spewing right now, which led people in their community to assume that abnormal was somehow code for morally wrong. The same sort of sanctimonious bullshit has led to the past torture and execution of homosexuals when your faith held sway over the law, the destruction of many families even after it lost that influence, and the suicide of many LGBT people who could not live with being disowned by their loved ones. Homosexuality may be statistically abnormal, but we do not seek to treat it because it is of no harm to the afflicted nor to anyone else so long as it remains a decision between two consenting adults. There is no objectively identified correlation between homosexuality and pedophilia, and there is no reason to assume that there would be outside of your moronic bigotry, which has been the source of its stigmatization and all of the unpleasantness that I just listed. Especially with your no true Scotsman blaming of fake Christians, when even the highest echelons of Catholicism up to and including the Vatican have refused to take a hard administrative stance of no tolerance regarding the sexual abuse of children from its own officials for generations. I am not going to take apart your article line by line, because frankly, its very premise makes it unworthy of any sane person's time, though I will link it in the description for my viewers to see it for themselves. We agree that forcing this gender spectrum crap on children is deplorable, but not because it somehow offends your God. It is deplorable because it confuses children who already have no grasp on the concept of sex this long before puberty, and because this sort of sensationalized victim narrative will negatively affect their capacity to rationally assess this topic in the future. We are concerned for the lives and welfare of children, not for the purity of their souls, which may not even exist. You may think that you're helping, Andrew, but the ultimate goal of this discussion is to find mutual understanding and an observation of objective reality, not to force everyone into submission to your faith. It is to repair the bonds that have since been severed due to irrational tribalism, and your every proselytizing word only adds fuel to that fire. Not every facet of the LGBT rights movement is responsible for this abusive behavior, let alone homosexuals as a whole. And people like you are every bit as responsible for this divisive victim mentality as the social justice blitzkrieg spilling out of colleges in the West these days. If there is anything I want you all to take away from this, it is to never forget that those to whom you stand opposed are still people. They still bleed, they still cry, and they are still as afraid for the future as any one of us. And it is never, never okay to blame every member of either sex, any given race, any given nationality, any given sexual orientation, or any given religion for the travesties we are seeing unfold in the world today. None of these things indicate a person's opinion, nor do they make a person automatically guilty or worthy of your disrespect. And with that said, this is a call to all of the Christians in my audience. Do not allow the Pat Robertsons and Andrew Bizads of the world to color your perception of people you do not know, else we take another step back toward a more primitive time of social tension with each and every assumption you make. The path they would have you follow leads to a place no better than the moral authoritarianism we are already fighting, a place where we will still be oppressing and murdering each other for aspects of our persons that were never a result of personal choice. Thank you all for your support, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what you saw here, have a look at my other videos and leave me your thoughts in the comments. If you support my message, then please like, favorite, and subscribe. If you'd like to help this channel improve, you can reach out to me on Twitter or on Facebook with any suggestions. And if you'd like to support me more directly, please consider following me on Patreon, links in the description. Thanks again, and I'll catch you all in my next video.